20 international chess professionals converge in St. Louis for the 2017 Fall Chess Classic. Hello chess fans and welcome to round 3 of the Fall Chess Classic. Things are just now heating up and only one player still has a perfect score. First, in Group A, Vladislav Kovalev was able to win his game. All the other games were drawn. This results in a sort of log jam at the top in the Group A standings. The fields combined have a prize fund of $36,000. The top prize in Group A is $6 grand. The top prize in Group B is $4 grand. We play one classical round of chess every day through Thursday, September 14. Rounds begin at 1 p.m. here in St. Louis, except for the last day, which begins earlier. There's so much left to play for in the Glamour division of the Fall Classic. You'll see the pairings for the next 2 rounds because the next recap video that comes to you will be a Sunday evening weekend wrap-up edition. Well, now here he is at +1, Grandmaster Josh Friedel, one of the chess club's regular top grandmasters we have here in all the U.S. championships and everything else we have you play in. Congratulations on your win today as Black against Alexander Shabalov. Take us through the game and show us what happened.
Yeah, so I've had a lot of interesting games with Alex over the years. I would say overall my score is not so great. I think I lost the first 5 games against him when I was much younger, but since then I've gotten a couple wins, but it's not been so pleasant, so I was very happy to get the win today. He played c4, and I think he missed that I could play bishop g4. Maybe he didn't, but I'm guessing he did because now his bishop is threatened to be stranded if I ever move my knight, and I'm going to be able to play knight h5. He played queen e1. I expected knight f3, but queen e1 is interesting. So I think he was trying to provoke me into playing this move. I don't know whether it's playable. Computer might tell me I'm a moron for not playing this. But the idea is I thought he would just start sacking stuff. So bishop b2. I can give this check, but as pretty as this looks with knight g3 coming in, he plays here, and I actually don't think I'm threatening anything. Because, for example, if I start pitching all my pieces, going a little fast, but the idea is basically that there's no mate. So it looks very pretty to do all this with my knights, but I didn't find anything. It's very tempting, especially with the bishops out here. I have c6, queen b6 in some positions, but I didn't find anything. And I was looking at this one, queen h4, knight takes a1, and I thought he could either take or even just take this knight. And again, it's kind of a weird position because this bishop's out of play. I'm up in exchange, but it's also it was a little bit scary after rook takes with all the threats on my knight. Again, I thought objectively maybe this was the way to go, but I thought that I could play knight h5 and just end up a pawn, which was a little simpler. So he surprises me again by taking and playing knight b3. Takes I expected because this bishop is quite bad, but knight b3 was a little unexpected. So again, I could play a move like g5, but it's always a little bit loose. I thought this move was much safer. So my idea is that if he tries queen f2, I can play f5. We take everything. And then I have a very important move, g5. And after he retreats his rook, I take. And all these endgames are going to be terrible because I'm not up material, but he has all these split pawns. I'm going to play c5, fix this guy. He's going to suffer a long time. And I figured he would not do this. He's not someone who likes to defend tough endgames. He would rather get active counterplays, so he chose a very interesting move, queen a5. Kind of a bolt from the blue, but at the same time, it's not something that worried me when he threw it down. So I played f5. I thought that eventually he might get mated here very easily. If he ever allows me to push f3, it's going to be very nasty. So he played rook f2. Which is sort of a waiting move, which sounds weird, but basically he's taking advantage of the fact my pawn is pinned and improving his pieces. So if f3, his rook is on a better square. And then later, he didn't want to move his bishop because then it allows f3 immediately. So he wants to kind of keep me pinned while improving his position. So I thought I'd maybe play rook a8 here, which may have been simpler, but I chose c5, which I thought made sense, cutting off the queen. And I also wanted to keep this knight from getting back in the game. Which I thought was a good idea. Again, maybe not accurate, but he took, I took with the rook, queen g6, and here I thought he was almost busted. I thought I was going to play f3, his position was on the verge of collapse, but he plays a very good move, knight d2, which I missed. And the idea is that now his knight's coming to e4, and somehow his pieces coordinate. Again, maybe this is just a win for me, but I didn't think it was so simple. So I played f3. And here, I actually thought he was going to play g3, which looks insane. And again, maybe it loses. But the problem is that if I take this guy, I can't quite get after this pawn in time, because his knight's coming to e4 or f1 to defend. And if I play knight f4, which looks like a monstrous move, he takes, and I don't think I have more than a perpetual after bishop h3, bishop g4. I was considering rook f7 with the sneaky idea that if here I have a discovery, so he has to go back to a5, and even with all his pieces out of play, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm winning here, but I did not see it. So here I actually thought this was a little difficult. I was considering playing rook back to f7, queen c6, doubling rooks, knight e4, and then bishop back. Because he can't really take this pawn. If knight takes, I grab on g3, where he's going to get mated. If queen takes, I take here, he loses a piece. If rook takes, I take, and he loses a rook. But I'm also not totally sure I have a threat, because if I take the knight, he threatens to trade queens. So again, I wasn't really sure this was all that amazing. But he played this move, which surprised me, and I thought that this was quite good. So I think he may have missed something tactically here, because he played bishop e3, which could not have been his intention. Because if rook takes g2, I have bishop h3, and he can't take my queen because of mate. And if he plays queen takes d6, I think the simplest way was to actually just trade queens, put my bishop on h3, and then rook f8 comes, and rook f1, which is deadly. So I think that he did not want to do this. So he played bishop e3, and now it should have been pretty easy to win. But I let him back in, which has happened in a lot of our games, actually. I've had a lot of good positions, but he's very resourceful, and I always have to be on my toes. And I thought I was, but I missed something here, rook b1. So my original intention, and I sort of stuck to it as usual, is rook e8. And for example, if rook b8, I think I can even just play h6. And I mean, the problem is there's always knight f4 tricks, and queen e6 is coming, and I think that he's just lost. For example, if he tries to take this pawn, I can even just play king h7. Takes, and this is a very common pattern, knight f4. And there's queen e1, knight e2, knight h3, too many threats. He shouldn't take this pawn, but again, I think that it's pretty much over. I thought that this was actually quite easy as well, with my idea that after rook b8, I'd play king h7, and then I'm going to just play queen e6, and he's going to be in big trouble. But he plays this move, and this was a real dash of cold water for me, because the bishop's attacked, and it doesn't have that many great squares, and he takes away a lot of my own squares. So here, I thought that maybe I had already messed it up. Lucky for me, he didn't have tons of time. Neither of us did, but he had less, and I think that helped me a little bit. So I played bishop b7. If I play bishop c6, the problem is that he plays queen c8, and my bishop has no square. So I thought I'd go here. If queen b8, I can play queen back to f7. So he plays queen e7, I play bishop c6, and then bishop f3. So the idea is that he doesn't have any way to attack the queen because this square isn't available. So he goes back. But my problem is I don't have that many moves here. But I did find an idea which I thought was nice. I played d5. So if bishop takes, of course, knight f4. If pawn takes, my intention was queen b6, threatening queen b1, which is a very nasty threat because he's going to have problems on the back rank. He plays bishop c1. And here, if queen b1, queen e3, maybe not so easy, but I play knight f4, threatening knight e2, which is a monstrous move. And if he takes, then I play queen b1, leading to mate. And I thought that this was a very nice line. So he played queen takes, which loses as well. After the game, he mentioned he can throw in this move, which I may have overlooked. And then I thought I had a move here, but for some reason, I may have just missed something. But I can go back, but now he can take, and it's not as easy. Again, I feel like with the pawn on g2, it should be quite good for black. But at the same time, if I don't have anything forcing, he does have a lot of pawns. And at the very least, this has become way more complicated than it should have been for me. At the same time, I still think that maybe I have good chances to win here, but this would have been much tougher, and the game would probably still be going. Instead, he played queen takes c5. So at first, my intention was this, originally when I had planned this. But now, threatening queen f8, if bishop c1, then knight f4 again, but he has this move. And somehow queen c1 comes, and it's not so easy. But my other intention, which is what I ended up going with, was knight g3, which is a forcing blow. He played knight h3, which loses as well. But if pawn takes knight, queen h5. So first of all, if knight h3, king here, I can, among other wins, I can just queen, because there's mates. If he plays, the threat is just queen h1 followed by checkmate. If he moves the bishop anywhere on this diagonal, for example, say, I don't know, here, I play queen h1, takes, check, and then I do the very boring thing and win his queen. It's very important his queen's on c5 here, because there is no real checkmate otherwise, I don't think. So that was the plan, and oops, sorry, if he goes the other way with the bishop, then I do actually get to give checkmate. I play here. Here, of course, he can't ever go to e1 because of queen e2. There we go. g5, bishop g4, and mate. I was half hoping the game would end like this. But instead he played knight h3, and now I thought the simplest was to just take a piece. And again, he can play on here, but he only has a pawn for the piece, and he's likely to get mated anyway, so he just resigned. Queen g2 is coming next. He probably has to play this move, but I can kind of pick my choice here. Like, queen g2 is very simple, among others, so he decided just to resign. So again, I mean, overall, I thought that I was on top most of the game, but it was definitely quite a mess. I played a couple clear errors to give him maybe more chances than I should have. But overall, pretty happy with the win, especially to beat a player who I've certainly had my share of troubles with.
Right, and I really dug that combination at the end with, pick your poison. When it comes to the Fall Classic, what does this tournament mean to you?
I mean, to be honest, anytime I can play at the club, it's a nice thing because conditions are really good here, and it's also quite a strong field, a beatable field, but a strong field. And I don't get to play round robins very often, so for me, it's just a great experience.
Well, congratulations, Josh. Thank you for joining me. Let's take a look at the standings after round 3 in Group B. Alejandro Ramirez is still the man to beat in Group B. Today, Ramirez was naturalized as a U.S. citizen. The process took a little bit longer than usual, so with the tournament director's blessing and his opponent's blessing, Prasanna, the game began 3 hours late, and it still proved to be a fruitful one for Alejandro Ramirez. Here are the pairings for the next 2 rounds to take place on Saturday and Sunday, September 9 and 10. Each round's notable players will be interviewed in this recap, but remember to follow the games live every day at 1 p.m. in St. Louis via Chess24 and USChessChamps.com.